Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, you had said prescribed, but an earlier witness said that it can't be prescribed because it's a Schedule 1. And so you would mean recommended?
Recommended, yes, sir.
And your point of sale, was it a program, would be similar to the ones in the financial systems? How Sorry about that. And it's similar to a financial system, but another witness testified that this would be all cash based on banking regulations. Would the point of sale still be as effective if we're dealing with cash transactions rather than, say, a credit card or insurance payments?
Representative, that's a great question. Yes, the point of sale is tracking the transactional amount, not the form of payment. And there is a whole other discussion that probably needs to be had in Pennsylvania in terms of how, because of federal law, how these companies and dispensaries are banked. That is, if you go into other states, you will see ATMs literally sitting in the lobby and cash is taken out and paid, and then you have big trucks that come and pick up the cash. Now, is that the most ideal? No. Unfortunately, banks have been given a very gray area of what they can bank and who they can bank. But in terms of a real-time point-of-sale system, I simply need to know how much the transaction was for, when it was done, what the amounts and everything, how it was paid for. I don't care. If it was paid for in cash, if it was paid for by credit card, which I doubt, if it was paid for by debit card. Ideally, if the federal government continues to keep the status quo, I think states are going to have to figure out a way to bank this industry without federal government oversight of that banking structure. I mean, and it's probably more complex than to talk about here. Illinois recently ran into a problem where they put an RFP out for the state to have a bank come in and do this, and no bank responded to the RFP. Zero.
So
so they pulled it.
From a practical point of view, though, in terms of sales tax or whatever type of tax the Commonwealth would look at placing on this, it would just be a data collection as opposed to any type of collection of the sales tax or whatever mechanism, because it wouldn't be an electronic transaction. So therefore, we would still be relying on the dispensaries. Correct. To self-regulate and report all that cash. You would.
You would have an audit trail and say, okay, that dispensary had $38,000 in sales, and the sales tax due on that was $8,000, and the dispensary would have to determine how they got that $8,000 to the state for remittance. In the financial world, to your point, it's all automated. It's all either an ACH or it's a credit transaction or it's an EFT or because we can utilize the formal banking system.
But to your knowledge now, the way the federal law is based, you wouldn't be able to do that if we would go forward with something in Pennsylvania.
I think it would be very difficult for the dispensary to have a banking relationship to accept if their merchant provider found out that they were accepting credit card transactions for the sale of medical cannabis. I believe their merchant provider would cancel that merchant agreement.
So the Illinois system that's being proposed, is that these people would come through in the distributorships bringing bags of cash to the State House? I mean, is it?
Again, without getting too technical, I believe they are creatively figuring out how to get cash into a bank account and then remit checks to the state for their fees and their other costs that are required by state law to provide to the state.
Okay, thank you.
But it is a challenge.